Hey everyone, welcome to the All Things Dad podcast, where we talk about all things dad. Our mission is simple. Really, it's to help make better dads, leaders, and people. Today's guest on the show is one of those people, Alex Wietrzykowski. Spell that for me if you can. I learned how to a long time ago, but that's okay. Alex is an entrepreneur and a business owner. He earned his doctorate in physical therapy from the University of Florida, as well as holds certifications in strength and conditioning, his CSCS, and is medical level 2 certified through the Titleist Performance Institute. You'll see that as TPI on people's signatures, on their alphabet soup after their names. Already. Alex loves to golf. Obviously, if you can tell, we're in a little bit different of a setup than usual, but I love it. So we'll have to take some swings here after this, as well as is very involved with his faith. Where at his church, he serves as a deacon and hosts a weekly men's group that really focuses on masculinity and the Word of God. So really excited to talk about all that stuff. Alex has 3 beautiful daughters ranging from 8 months to 5 years old. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's really excited to do this. It's something I obviously have a passion for as you do, so it's going to be cool to dive into it.
Yeah, and full transparency. So Alex and I have known each other for quite a long time. On and off, right? So I think we were really close kind of through the later years of high school. Then I moved away to school, ended up transferring back my last year for physical therapy. We were both in that. So we studied a lot together, got to know each other quite a bit. Then
those were the days, man.
Then you moved to Florida, and then now you're back, and we kind of have reconnected, and it's just been great. So I know a lot of what you do and who you are is rooted, in your faith, in fitness, in your family, and I thought that would be a great episode today. So, just start with your role in being a dad. What does that mean to you personally? We'll start with that.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I think it's a very interesting question because it can be very general and very specific, kind of both at the same time.
Yeah.
Being a dad is the most terrifying thing. I think like it's weird because like it's one of only a few things I think that you are responsible for. You face it like every single day of your life, and it never stops, right? So it would be very easy to like let that become something that you forget about the responsibility, or you forget about the challenge, especially because it's easier that way, but it could look totally different every day. So aside from it being terrifying and being a challenge, I think it's the most rewarding thing that you could ever do, because whether they're, you're fighting with kids in the morning and you're seeing them pray on their own at night, or you're seeing them be kind to each other in ways that you tried to teach them, or even like the funny things where you see like the you-isms, like the stuff you're like, shoot, that's me. Like
whether it's good or bad.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. When you see that stuff take place, you're just like, wow, like this little person that is totally dependent on me, who, whether I like it or not, holds me accountable for everything that I do and say, is going on to be able to like serve their sisters, or my oldest likes to pray for the ambulance when the ambulance drives by, because she thinks that she's like totally integrated into like her prayers to serving that person and like healing that person, and that's stuff that she just loves to be mindful of. Like that kind of stuff is what sets you on fire for it.
Oh yeah. That makes you proud about those little things. You're like, man, kids are so clueless in both good and sometimes bad ways, but like really good ways, honestly, is where you see a lot of that, like, naiveness. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair.
But that's great. Yeah. How has it changed you? So from, before to after, obviously we're half a decade in at this point.
Like being a dad.
Yeah.
Oh, I think the list is shorter, like how it hasn't.
Probably.
Like I feel like it's changed everything. Like it's weird too, because growing up you hear those types of things from your parents. Like I used to be able to watch horror movies until I had kids, or used to listen to XYZ music until I had kids, and I don't like lyrics. Or like Kara's biggest thing was like used to be able to watch SVU until we had kids. I mean, to be fair, Kara, I love you, but I was telling her, like, even before we had kids, I was like, this is a dumb show. Like, you can't watch this show. But I think it's changed me in like a lot of ways that I know that we're going to dive into as we move into this, but just like this, learning the sacrifice of it and continuing to learn what does that look like more and more as they get older. And then as you have more and as your life changes, like if you don't let it change you in every way possible to support them, I don't feel like I'm serving them well. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't really know of all the ways that it has changed me or it will change me into the future, though. Like the ways that I think I can think of now is, my time doesn't belong to me anymore. My things like finances don't belong to me anymore, but also like, what am I going to choose in those moments when I'm tired and there's a lesson to be learned? Like, what am I going to do in that stuff? So, serving them and serving my wife, would probably be the thing that I didn't understand until I had to face that decision and decide what I was going to do.
So listening to, I'm just going to throw a curveball at you. So listening to you talk about that. So I think a little bit about, I think the last two guys and people I've talked to have asked the question about, that I've asked the question too about how do you make sure that you're being the best you for the people around you, and a lot of the answers that I get are usually by taking time for you and by being the best you. Mm-hmm. So how do you find time for you? Because obviously it's in terms of like how that changes or how that has changed over time. We go from being able to spend all of the time on you to so much less. Like what do you do to fill your cup to make sure that you're the best you for everybody else?
That's a great question. I think, there's been a lot of time, and a lot of it's also been like unintentional, but there's been a lot of time like learning who I am, discovering like what are the ways that I'm wired to do that. And I think it's been, trial and error. So some things that you try as hobbies or try as spending your time in aren't things that you necessarily enjoy. You don't feel refreshed. And what I've found about myself is that I'm a very social introvert. Like I love to talk to people. I love to serve people. I love to have like one-on-one conversations or small groups. Big groups exhaust me. And so when I realized that, then I had to start realizing like, okay, what do I need to do in order to fill that cup if those are the things that I enjoy? Mm-hmm. And so, aside from having small get-togethers, like I laugh because
it's both exhausting.
And I used to, when we were married, even before we had kids, but afterwards, I used to just get up and leave the room. Like for the longest time, Kara would be like, "Are you okay? Like, is there something wrong, or is there something I did, or like, are you just like irritated with the family?" And I'm just like, I didn't even realize I did it. It's just what I did. And I do try to isolate in a way to feel refreshed, but isolation in itself, of course, like with anything that isn't balanced, isn't helpful. Like I like to be able to work on projects, like to be able to golf, which is why I'm thankful that we have a simulator. But realistically, the only answer that I can give that question is like, I fill my cup by realizing that I can't fill my cup. Like only Jesus can. Yeah. And so when I started to learn about him and learn about how I can have that relationship with him, as I started to read that, in scripture, like I realized that like he did the same thing. He had massive crowds following him, and then it would just be like Jesus left. Like Jesus retreated to solitude, to isolated places. And being able to do that and really spend time with the Lord and like realize that that's really how I fill my cup, by realizing that I don't have the energy for those things, but he gives it to me. I think that's the biggest way. But then of course, like being able to golf, being able to exercise, I do a lot of like art related stuff still. A lot of that is still super fun. Yeah.
What's your Instagram, by the way? So it's at Wietrzykowski, I think. Wietrzykowski _customs or something. Yeah. So part of that art thing, Alex is an awesome artist, so
Thank you.
he like can design and draw and color and paint custom shoes, and it's killer. So
Thank you.
make sure you check that out.
Yeah.
So two parts. I think I completely agree. So, and I think a lot of people that either listen or watch will agree too, is even people that I think are extroverts, like you still need a minute here or there.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just need it. And we had, Michelle, my wife's work people and like all of their family and kids over to our house last weekend or the weekend before. And there were a few times when I found myself like where all the kids were, like not where all the adults were. Like I was downstairs in the basement, like where all the kids were just running around, just like, I'm just going to go check on the kids. And like you were checking on the kids, but I'm also like giving myself 10 minutes of like, okay, I just like can't be this strictly extroverted social person for like 5 hours straight.
Yeah.
And I think people resonate with that. And the second part of that is, so you kind of have started to bridge the gap, talking about God and the role that he plays in your life, as well as the men's group that you kind of lead at your church, and how that has to do with masculinity and all of that. Just start superficial. What does masculinity mean to you as a dad and as a man?
Yeah. What it means to me, my mind wants to break it down like analytically. I feel like it has become a social construct where we do try to look at like, okay, masculinity means things that would be assigned to a man or a male. But that had to come from observing something, right? And so what are we observing? Historically, they were observing what men needed to do to provide, to protect, to teach, to learn, to serve. And I think you can see that consistent throughout all history. And I think that looks different today. I don't know the number, but even masculinity today, you might know the stat about kids now are spending way more time with their dads than of past generations. And I think that's because the dawn of remote work, of being able to do or explore different avenues of work, allows them more time to do that, maybe generally speaking, because they haven't had it themselves. So masculinity, I think just it means that, but you continue to like flip the page and realize like there's more to the story, there's more to the definition as I am faced with the challenges to it. At the end of the day, I feel like it's just, what do I need to do and be to help and serve with the strength that I've been given in whatever way that looks like.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was listening to a podcast on the drive here, and they were talking about what does it mean to be a man of God, and they kind of intertwined masculinity into that. And really what their whole episode and their whole chat boiled down to was what they were saying is provide and protect, basically. Mm-hmm. Like, be that safe house, but be that provider. That was like the two things that they had talked about. And it's difficult because like we know there's a lot more to that, right? And you can dig into, as what is the difference between masculinity and this whole buzzword toxic masculinity in today's society. But, there's a lot that goes into that as well. So before we really dive into it though, I know you've got quite a backstory kind of about how all of this kind of has blended together. Talk us through us through that.
Yeah, sure. So masculinity was something that I took on an interest in very early in my life, and quite honestly, I don't really even know like what I don't know if there was an aha moment. I just felt like it was something that I began to realize was lacking. I don't know why, but through college, when I started to really be pulled to the Lord, and I went to University of Toledo for this kind of like what you shared for undergrad. I got involved in Campus Crusade for Christ there, otherwise known as Cru now, and I went to what they call a summer project. It's essentially a mission trip to on on Northwoods, Ontario, Canada. I didn't expect to see a woman for 6 weeks. It was all about biblical masculinity. What does it look like? The first year I went as a student. The second year I went as a student staff, and I met Kara there that second year. Apparently we were both there the first year. We didn't talk much, but like this person that like didn't even expect to see a woman for 6 weeks as he discovered what masculinity was. I met my wife in the woods of Canada. Like, it's just, I don't know if I like did that right, yeah. but she ended up, she was an athlete. She played tennis at Ohio State. So she was there with a different group, just there for 2 weeks. And so that's how I met her. But, when I was able to come back from that and like kind of start that relationship, then I was able to co-lead, the men's ministry in Crew for the years that I was there. And it was a really awesome experience. I think I learned probably more than I was able to teach at that point, just being so young, which was really cool. But it definitely goes back. It's been a passion for a while.
So with that masculinity definition, there's a lot of talk about mental health, especially in today's day and age. A lot of talk about men's mental health, because it's walking that line between what's masculine and what's turns into toxic masculinity, and what are we supposed to do, as men, and how do people emotionally release, and all of those things go along with that, right? How do you, when you have times when you're feeling, I know we've talked a little bit about, kind of like the woe is me, trying to get away from that woe is me mindset, but how do you, like, if you're struggling mentally, like what do you do to release, or what advice do you have for other men with young families or families in general that might just need some, whether it's a minute here or there?
Yeah. Well, I think to share a little bit of context for me, and I didn't really know any of this until I moved away. I moved away very young. I mean, Karen and I got married. I know you and I were talking about this. I was 22, I think. Yeah. And we moved to Florida. And it wasn't until then where I had to kind of solve those problems on my own, where I realized like how I would default to solving things or reacting to them. And it was very anxious. And so there's a lot of fear about worrying about unnecessary details, things that aren't prone to happen or not going to happen often. And even today, like, I'm still learning, like, really how much the Lord wants that part of me too, to like be able to say I have faith in a sovereign God means that he's going to have sovereignty over the things that I fear. So mental health has been something that has been a learning process, but also a challenge for a while. And to be able to answer it, I think I would just say it takes intentional practice. It's easier said than done. Like, showing up every day to do something that you're bad at is hard, but the context there is, I feel like everybody kind of has this. I refer to before COVID as the long, long ago, because it seems like it's impacted us in so many ways. And our COVID story was like, we were in Florida. Our air conditioning quit where we needed $15,000 replacement while Kara was 7 months pregnant with our second. COVID shut down the county, and on that day, her mom had actually passed away from cancer related. And so all those things hit us at once. Like, I pretty much had to realize that I had no strength to fix those things. And so it was only like when I realized like how little I was able to do to control those things, that I could fully surrender that to God. And so the way that I handle my mental health as a result of that is realizing that I don't have the strength for it. It's just like showing up every day, giving it to him, trusting him with it. I will say though, practically, Headspace, I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's an awesome app, and it's kind of what I used through that time. Being able to sit down and control thoughts and recognize that they're thoughts, and then realize that those thoughts don't have to become emotion, because the thoughts are the fuel for your emotions and your emotional responses. That was huge. Like, to be candid, when they introduce it, like the app, like, okay, this is going to be something brand new. I was like, this is like really strange. I don't even know why I'm trying this, but I'm just kind of desperate to try something. Yeah. They do 1, 3, or 5 minute courses. I picked a 3-minute course to sit still for 3 minutes, and I started like getting panicky because I just didn't know how to do that.
People don't know how to do that in general.
No.
I mean,
no.
At my job, we have, my one-up has really encouraged us to do regular mindful minutes, or basically like a 3 or a 5 minute centering prayer. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You try to use one word to bring you back to nothingness for 3 minutes, right? And you basically sit there and you try to focus on that word, and then wherever your mind goes, you kind of just let everything roll in and out without trying to grab it. And if you find your mind start to grab it, then you're supposed to focus back on your centering word, bring you back to nothingness for like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And people don't know how to do nothing and just like let go and let God, or like just be.
Yeah.
In today's world, people don't know how to just be.
And it's an interesting thing to think about, and you kind of have to respect that, not necessarily as an enemy, but as a force, because our mind is the most powerful part of us. If we don't know how to control it, like what are we doing for ourselves, you know?
Yeah.
So, a few different things that I've used in the past to help think through that type of thing is, number one, like your struggles are not rare to only you. Yeah. There's so much of the population dealing with that stuff. That's scripturally related. Even no challenge has come to you except which is common to man. Like that's real. And there are a few analogies that have been really powerful. One is like that idea of an hourglass. So like you have a massive base that collects sand, you have a massive base that holds it, but you have a very narrow place to where sand can travel through. If we are just focusing on the one grain of sand that passes through, because that's really all we have energy for, our time is well spent. If we're spending time focusing and worrying about the things that have not come or the things that have already happened, it's just it's a waste of time in the truest definition. So that's been a huge one for me. Just kind of controlling what you can control and being there in that moment, I think, has been huge for my mental health.
And you know, that's obviously huge for mental health, but it's even when we talk about in parenting, in leadership, in your professional lives, in your personal lives, it's you can only control what you can control. And I think a lot of people really, really, really struggle with that. Like there's a lot of people that want to be able to control what they can't, and they stress out because they can't control what they can't control. But yeah, there's a lot to be said for, I mean, let go and let God and be able to control what you can under whatever circumstances are right in front of you, and not spend time worrying about the other stuff.
I think about like what bordering into the thought of toxic masculinity, even like think about what masculinity pushes on people. It's like this thought of you need to be independent, and you need to be able to not only be good at everything, like be able to do everything with a strength, but you need to like not have had to learn it. Like you just need to be able to be good at it.
Right.
And so when you think about that with like life's problems, it's clear why we struggle with it so much, because if that's thrust upon us as a thought, and we're like, okay, well, we got to just be able to figure this out. The real part of our mind's like, I don't know how to do this.
Right.
And so, it's got to be real, man. Like
well, there's a day, in full transparency, there's a day one for everything. So, I mean, sometimes you just have to get started with stuff, and you just figure it out along the way. I mean, you know, so whether that is, you know, and whether you're putting some faith in yourself, some faith in God, some faith in a spouse, some faith in whoever it is that's going to kind of help you along the way. So men's groups, Bible studies, all of that. What are some of we talk about filling cups. What are some of your favorite, do you have favorite books or chapters or verses in the Bible that you read in times when you're really struggling to kind of help pick you up?
Yeah. Well, number one, I challenge my group to do this weekly, is to just spend a little bit of time in Proverbs every day. So like most months have 31 days or 30, whatever, and there are 31 Proverbs. That lines up very well. I do that very frequently. Admittedly, I'm not doing it right now. I'm spending a lot of time in Isaiah, which is also an awesome place to read. But So being able to go there for that wisdom, and you know, a lot of that wisdom is even a father teaching his son. And so you see things from that lens, especially as a dad. You're like, oh, okay, well, maybe I didn't appreciate these things as wisdom before, but I realize why he's trying to teach them to his son now. What's the importance? And of course, as men, it's like even how to protect your heart, protect your eyes, and in that way protect your family. That's just really good. Psalm 77 is also a really good one. Essentially Psalm 77, there's a piece in it. I have it written down too. I can read it out loud, but it's essentially this prayer of acknowledging that God is good no matter what. And at one point he actually even says, I'm just going to look at it. He says, I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your wonders of old. So he's thinking about what God has done in the past, how he's been faithful, if he doesn't necessarily have those examples in his own life yet, or he necessarily can't see them. I will ponder all your work and meditate on your mighty deeds. Your way, O God, is holy. What God is great like our God? And so really Proverbs, Psalm 77, really all of Psalms is probably what I'd expand that to. Yeah. And then there's one verse in Isaiah 26 that says, you keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on the Lord because he trusts in you. And that's another one that I always go back to. And candidly, I don't know how you were with this, but like during the births of our children, that was what my mind went back to, because we had some crazy experiences. And so like anxiety plus crazy experiences wasn't the best combo for me.
You weren't even the one that was having a baby.
It wasn't even me. It wasn't even me. Yeah.
Right.
No.
Yeah, that becomes challenging. That provides a lot of great insight, though. You know, I've been really spending a lot of time in Luke, honestly, the last week or so. Kind of diving a little bit more into, especially some of the parables. I think every time you read any parable, you can get something totally different out of it. If you're not just skim reading it, if you actually read through a parable and any of them and just think through the situation, you can kind of walk away with a completely different outcome in your mind about what lesson does that play in today's life, in today's world.
Yeah. It says it's living and breathing, you know, it's gonna apply wherever you are. Lord's trying to work on you there, you know.
For sure. You know, I think a couple for me, one of the most cliche verses that, you know, people have tattooed all over them. I do.
Do you?
But yeah, but I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I think that's really a verse in Philippians to just kind of always think back to in general. As well as the first chapter of Joshua is awesome. I've gone to some conferences where Carrie Taylor, who is the executive director of Cornerstone at Hope, they're a Christian-based counseling facility, has spoken at, and they're really big in the first chapter of Joshua. But, you know, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Fear God's with you wherever you go. And they've kind of expanded that into a bunch of different speaking series, like courageous parenting and courage. So there's a lot of different things that you can do in that book as well. So just a couple things, you know. That we
also the book of James is really good. Yeah. If you're looking for a way to be convicted as a man and as a follower of Christ, just read James for like 5 seconds and you'll be like questioning everything about you.
Don't do that and then go sit in a float tank. So, have you ever done that?
No. Was that a thing?
Yeah, so there's one in Perrysburg.
Yeah.
They've got you just go lay there in the dark.
I've heard of them. How is it?
There's high amounts of salt.
Ah.
And you just basically, it's just like a hot tub that you just like completely float in because the salinity is so high, and you just like lay there in the dark.
It's total sensory deprivation, or?
Yeah, pretty much. You can be. You can have music on quietly or not, but you talk about people being able to not sit still for 3 minutes. Go try 30 while you're floating.
Have you heard of the sensory deprivation room?
Not directly, I don't think.
It's like people go crazy and hallucinate in it. It's like,
oh, I bet they would.
The longest anybody has ever lasted is like 43 minutes because you start to hear your organs and they like need to get out. I'm like, I don't even want to try that.
Where's the closest one?
I don't know.
We might go solve all the world's problems.
When I need a break from kids, I'd like one of those.
For me, that'll do one of two things. That will either solve the world's problems or it will make me realize that I have more than I think I do. One or the other.
Right. Or both. Really, you were the world's problem.
Yeah, maybe it's just me. So the last piece of this, though, is to kind of segue into talking about fitness and exercise is, a lot of people, I think, you and I, you could tell, are in good physical shape. When I talked about this with Jordan on his podcast, I think when people talk about thinking about what is discipline, especially, as a man or as we get a little bit older, discipline to me in the form of, if we talk or we think about actions speak louder than words, is someone who is in good physical shape. They don't have to be someone that's hugely jacked, someone that runs marathons, but I think in general, because it takes a lot of showing up and doing work to be able to get in good shape, right? Yeah. There's a lot of behind the scenes work to do that. So, and I know fitness, you kind of talked a little bit about it as being a release or somewhere you can go to kind of break away from for however long. So what is that? What is that importance to you? Is it primarily in the discipline? Is it the time away? Is it the take pride in being in shape? What is it?
Fitness?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm biased, I think, because that's my background. But I think the reason why I'm biased towards that, and the reason why it continues to be my background, is because you see how much people struggle with that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So fitness to me, I would say, without trying to be too extreme, is it's essential, because when we only have 24 hours in a day, we see what a person's values are based on how they spend their time. Granted, everybody doesn't value fitness. That's fine. But that's going to be one of those few things that being able to be fit or be healthy is going to help you do everything else. Mm-hmm. And so that's not necessarily the case for the rest of hobbies, right? Yeah. So that's the reason why I say that it's essential, is because, how much money gets spent in medical bills, preventative medical bills, things that we could get on the front end is just by not necessarily going on the treadmill and just blasting yourself for an hour every day and like calling it a week. But finding a way to use fitness in an enjoyable way so that you can continue to do those other things, I think that's the challenge, but it is super essential.
Yeah, because not only, obviously, when you exercise there's a billion effects, and it helps pretty much every single, health, medical, yes. Every single, basically every single medical condition there is can be improved with some amount of exercise.
Right.
Most, yeah. Right. And I think there's such a big piece of doing that then gives you energy to be able to do everything else and be able to put more of yourself into those other things because you have more energy. And I think, too, there's the mental component of it, too. Obviously, you can look at, you have increased blood flow to your brain. You have all these other things that it can help in terms of, like, learning and education, and all of these things are all improved with people who exercise. But just in the fact that I think looking in a mirror can play games up here, and it all ties it all together. I'm not, again, and not in the day and age where we're like, there's a lot of talk about body shaming and all that. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying in general, like, not to be controversial, but if you're confident in what you are walking around with, it's one less thing to worry about, and that is something you can control. Most people can control.
Yeah.
Most people.
And, I think it's even worth saying for, like, people that, to be totally candid up front, my struggle, as we've already talked about a little bit, is finding time to fill my cup.
Yeah.
Because I would rather push it out to everybody else, just because I have young kids and it's like you're in the trenches, right? That's my challenge. But for those that have the challenge of just finding a motivation or even an interest to exercise, don't look at the people that are built to the nines, are just in massive shape, and then realize that, like, that's just because they're disciplined and I'm not, because we all have strengths and weaknesses.
Correct.
And so you could ask yourself, not in a judgmental way, of course, but what could they be slacking in? Like, if they're disciplined here, what are they letting lapse? And so it's not that they are better than anybody else. It's that they value, they change their time to be more allotted at the gym or in
it's just prioritization.
Yeah. And so it's a good thing to remember just that like everybody's trying to improve. There's no reason to judge them because there are things that they need to do to get better, and there are things that you need to do to get better.
Oh, absolutely.
And truth, I think that's kind of where you're talking about, like not trying to get controversial, but like truth is truth. Like I'm not going to be the one to say that your blood pressure's 200, like you got to be the one to take accountability for that. But that doesn't mean you're not great at doing something else.
Absolutely.
So I think that's an important point to mention.
Yeah. It's 100% of how do we prioritize time.
Yeah.
And that's why there's a lot of people, you look at like your Andy Frisellas and all your like hardcore exercise people, and they talk a lot about time in a day. And if you don't have time to exercise, and if you get up an hour earlier, you just found time to exercise,
right.
And there's a lot of studies that are showing that, a lot of people get not a lot of sleep as we are in a society that is driven by caffeine anymore anyway.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of studies that are showing 7 hours is better for mental health than 8 of sleep. So, getting up at 5:30 may be really hard for a couple weeks, but it will become easier when you start to feel better. Mm-hmm. But again, like you said, it's not. Yeah, it's how people prioritize time.
Yeah,
and there's not one thing that's better about how one person does it than another.
Yeah, it's a process.
But
it's just all a process, and you have to be able to see it as such.
Yeah, absolutely. So, people out there, if anyone out there is listening and is just getting started or kind of has really been interested in getting started, just in a fitness journey, advice. What do you tell someone that's like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I want to get in better shape?
Yeah, to the brand new person, I would say large goals are important, but small goals are probably more so. Value being able to get 1% better today versus whatever your 3-month goal is, because momentum is way more powerful than people give credit for. Mm-hmm. And honestly, to get help, like it doesn't have to be a coach, but I strongly encourage that it's not just a single article on men's or women's health. Try to do research, because why would you invest time or money into something that you don't understand? Mm-hmm. Especially when maybe in the past it's led to failure or led to quitting, mm-hmm. and discouragement. So there's so much there that can be enjoyable in the fitness world, in the activity, and really just the wellness world. That doesn't have to be waking up at 4, Sylvester Stallone, Rocky style, drinking nothing but raw eggs. Like if I can't run on a treadmill for 45 minutes a day, I'm failing. Like there's so much to the world that's not that I don't think people get. Yeah. Like truly how little you have to do for it to be pro health.
Some steps and
yeah.
make it easier, a couple better choices eating every day, and you can start to make a huge difference over time.
Yeah. And then the other one is just give yourself a break. Like no matter what you do, any step is a step forward, and you're doing way more than you would on the couch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cut yourself some slack.
Yeah.
Don't be so hard on yourself, which is really hard to do in the day and age of social media. You go scroll Facebook or you go scroll reels on YouTube, and all you see are, men and women who are in phenomenal shape, right? And then it can get really discouraging, I think, because people, you can go to the gym for hypertrophy physiologically takes 8 to 12 weeks to start to happen.
Yeah.
6 to 12. Depending on where you're at in your fitness journey.
Yeah.
So you probably won't notice anything in a mirror for at least 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge when every time you touch your phone, you're looking at someone who's got veins popping out of every muscle in their body.
Yep.
So that's absolutely so critical. It's just kind of remembering, no matter where you're at, it's just do something today that you didn't do yesterday. Have the courage to go do something hard.
Yeah. And another big one on that note is like when people are interested in weight loss.
Yeah.
they'll put 3 or 4 weeks into it, and you're still really in like the water retention due to inflammation phase.
Oh yeah. And people see scale up after 3 weeks.
Scale up. They're like, I'm doing everything wrong. Everything I read was wrong. I'm going to quit because I don't like budgeting the time. And it's like, you are just seeing exactly what you should see when you are doing it right. Yeah. It's just not understanding it. So trust the process, man. Just got to keep on going.
Trust it.
Yeah.
All right. So your day to day, we kind of have bridged a lot of these gaps, but Saw Health and Performance, your business, give us your elevator pitch. What is it? What do you do? What are you trying to do for people?
So Saw Health and Performance is my attempt at meeting people wherever they are, with personal training, fitness coaching. So I draw upon a background in injury management and prevention to be able to reach those performance goals despite the nagging injuries, that's kind of where I think there's the biggest gap. So that's where I stay. And so Saw Health and Performance is a way to do that in a virtual setting. I've had many years of experience doing that and developing how I do that better. And so this is my attempt to create a really online and hybrid for anybody in the Northwest Ohio area of being able to evaluate and assess people so that we can understand like baseline movements. Where is your body at? What is it telling us? Like where you need to start. We combine those, what I would call needs, with whatever your goals are. And we make a custom program for you. It doesn't stop at a program though. It's full accountability, full communication. And so the app that I use gives us the ability to communicate all day long. And so, if there's a day where it's like, hey, I don't have 30 minutes for my original planned workout, I'm actually going to be in the car all day long. Can you give me a 10-minute workout that just works on hip and trunk mobility? Or like, even if they don't say that and I realize that they would benefit from it, I just throw that in and it's totally accessible on their app. So all of that, status check-ins every month or two when we realize enough time has gone by and we can relook at, retweak, and readjust things. All of that is involved. So really the last piece there is my specializations are in golf and rotational sport development. Yeah. Those are sports like tennis and golf that people can do way well into their lives. And so there's going to be pickleball. Yeah. You ever play pickleball?
Yeah.
It's fun, man. And then that's just all on top of the general strength training, the general health wellness, as well as running. So most of my clients are within that realm, but again, it's like meeting people wherever they are because I would want that, Yeah. Yeah.
Where do people find you?
So I have Saw Health and Performance handle for Instagram and Facebook, Saw SAW, and then all one word. And then I have a YouTube channel as well where it's primarily exercise technique videos. And then my website is sawhealthandperformance.com.
Makes sense. Yeah. Put it all together.
Checks out.
Awesome. And we already talked about masculinity, so we already kind of hit on my last question that I usually ask everyone. Yeah. So anyway, Alex, thank you for your time today.
Of course.
It was really fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
We're going to hit on the simulator a little bit, see if you can give me any rotational tips. Got a little rib issue right now, so we'll see what happens.
Swinging too hard?
Yeah. It's for those of you who are paying attention. It's February in Northwest Ohio, so my golf clubs have not been swinging quite some time. But appreciate you. Thanks for coming on and being candid and open and honest. And it was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun. Again, All Things Dad. Make sure you check out the blog, allthingsdadblog.com, Instagram, Facebook at allthingsdad1. And obviously the podcast. Share it with your friends if you're getting anything out of it. So thanks for your time, guys.